The planet is heating up.
The oceans are becoming filled with plastic.
Change starts now.
Change starts now.
We're on a countdown
To zero waste. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is the Zero Waste Countdown Podcast. Here's your host, Laura Nash.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zero Waste Countdown podcast and radio show. Today, we're speaking with Daylin Horruitiner. She's a Cuban American, and we're going to discuss today why communism isn't the answer to solving all our environmental problems. So, Daylin, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me here.
What I see in a lot of the environmental world is people going so far to the left that I even see people saying, well, socialism would be better. There's obviously some people, especially in America right now, who are kind of cheering on communism. And Daylin's going to tell us a little bit about her own experience with these things because she knows so much about Cuba. And then we're going to relate it to an environmental perspective. So can you hold an environmental protest in Cuba?
You can't hold any environmental or any protest in Cuba for that matter. The only protests in Cuba that are allowed are actually organized by the government. And they do have organizations that cater to environmental causes, but not necessarily involving the population. It's mostly for international propaganda to collect funds from, international sources and stuff like that. There's really not a firm environmental movement that actually involves the Cuban community, the people.
Wow. So if the government wanted to get money from an organization, they could just have a whole bunch of people come and organize something and then get money that way? That seems a little...
Yeah, they do
Wow.
it all the time. Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. They do it all the time. That's the way they sell their system to the world. That's very evident once you leave Cuba and you see the MO, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Things are not as I, believed them to be while I was there.
Yeah. So what if somebody saw that someone was dumping toxic waste into, a river or somewhere? Like if they wanted to organize a protest, and let's say they did, and they had a bunch of people come out and said, we don't want these things being dumped in the river anymore, what would happen to those people? Would they be arrested?
They would be questioned. And those people, just to let you know, there isn't a way for regular people to be dumping waste anywhere in Cuba because regular people don't have access to any sort of machinery or factory or, it's all government controlled. Some Cubans do have boats, small boats, in which they're allowed to fish limited species. But other than that, you wouldn't have someone dumping any waste or anything harmful unless it's an actual entity, from the government, because they control everything that's got to do with production and everything else. There is just parentheses. I've been to Cuba as an adult and in the past 5 years, and the waste and the contamination is astounding.
Oh, no.
I have a brother-in-law. He's a fisherman, and he tells me he does diving, and he tells me that right there where El Malecón in Havana is, that long wall that, around that surrounds the ocean, known for so many rafters, jumping from there to seek freedom in rafts. He says that when he used to dive 10 years ago, it wasn't, you couldn't see so much contamination as you can now. He says that a lot of species are gone. And he also says that when he dives now, he sees a layer of cans in the bottom of El Malecón on the seafloor. And that's just someone that's able to see it. If you're, standing on top, on dry land, you don't see that.
So as far as I know, democracies and, kind of capitalist societies are the best in terms of cleanliness and zero waste and the environment. And so some people might say, well, what about the Scandinavian countries like Denmark or Sweden? They have more of like a democratic capitalist kind of thing going on. Like it's a mix. Like they have private healthcare, they have public healthcare, but everybody pays like really, really high taxes. So it's not the same kind of thing as like proper socialism or communism where you have basically usually a dictator and they're just controlling absolutely every aspect of everything, right? Because I
Hmm.
think that it is a lot better when you have a lot of people competing and a lot of people bringing their ideas forth where you have freedom to go protest if there's something going on. Like, I would imagine there'd be a trash problem.
There's a garbage pickup, and you wouldn't know it because when you walk through the streets of Havana or any other city, you could see the trash piling up right there in the corners. The smell, you can imagine the smell is horrible. Contamination, it's gross. And as far as recycling, no, there isn't a system where you actually separate your plastics and they don't have that.
So, yeah, I would imagine that if they're lying about the protests, if they're holding their own protests against themselves to get money from outside sources, then I wouldn't put it past them to lie about what they're doing with the trash. And the
Exactly.
ocean's right there, so who knows, right? Because a lot of countries, that's the best place for them to get rid of it because it's a cheap and easy way to get it out of sight and out of mind, right? Do you know what source of electricity Cuba uses? I guess it's like fuel oil.
They have thermoelectric plants.
That's good, right?
Yeah, but the only issue with these plants is they are harming a lot of the ecosystems around them. I was in Felton. Felton is one of the places where they have one of their huge plants, and this place has lost a lot of the marine life because the plant heats up the waters so much that
Really?
it's impossible for some of the marine life to survive.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, it might be too like I'm sure there's coral around Cuba, right?
Oh yeah, a
So
lot of coral and a lot of the species that these people depended on to, fish and eat, have disappeared from that particular area because of the thermoelectric plant.
wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that about that at all. I just read that some of the fuel oil comes from Venezuela, but
Yes.
there are actually problems with accessing fossil fuels. And I think actually I saw this in one of your videos where you were saying something about there's frequent electricity outages. Can we talk a little bit about that, like how that would harm the environment? So, for the one thing I'm thinking is that if you have all your food in the fridge and there is an electricity outage, wouldn't all of that just be spoiled because it's pretty warm there, right?
Yes, it's warm and humid, and the outages sometimes last 8 to 12 hours. So, your whole fridge
Wow.
just, yeah, your food goes bad very often because of the outages. And at some times during these 62 years, there were less outages. They go through ups and downs, but outages are a normal part of Cuban life. And the way they excuse it, they say it's because there are shortages and they want to save energy. So everybody has to ship in and, and just be without electricity for a while. The truth is, a lot of these plants have not been maintained for a while. Parts break and they're not repaired. And on top of that, it is also a mechanism that they use to control people because if you're busy trying to, save your food and you don't have ice and you don't have electricity to charge your phones, it's hot, you're fanning, if you have elderly or a baby and it's super humid, or people that, have different conditions, people don't have time or energy to think of anything else but their immediate need for comfort and health. So it's also a way to keep people under control and keep people under that constant mode of survival.
Yeah, that's what that woman said that went on Joe Rogan from North Korea. Did you happen to hear that interview?
I did.
So she was saying kind of the same thing that, you get this dictator in, and if the dictator keeps everybody at a level where they're hungry all the time, then they're not going to fight you because they're too hungry
Exactly. Yeah,
and they're
you're
too
hungry and you're
scared.
busy. It's not only the
Yeah.
physical hunger, it's the quest for hunger. for food, because you know that tomorrow you're going to have to solve, your issue of food for your family. So you kind of have to go to sleep that night thinking that you got to wake up and make a long line, or do something illegal, steal something
Mm.
from the restaurant or the bakery where you work. How are you going to sneak it out? All those things go through regular people in Cuba. And when you're trying to just meet your very basic needs, you usually don't have time or energy to rebel.
Yeah, it's scary, I think. But and that's, it's
Yeah.
horrible to think that someone would actually want that. But I think it's important that we learn about it. I watched another video of yours and I believe you said that there is a Cuban serving a 30-year jail sentence for possessing beef. Is this true?
Oh no, there are many Cubans serving sentences for beef.
Oh my
Absolutely.
gosh.
Yeah, no, beef was illegal in Cuba up to a few months ago. And yeah, a lot of people are in jail for killing a cow, way more than, not in quantity of people, but a lot of people are serving sentences way more severe than people who have killed human beings.
So like is Castro a vegan? Like I don't get it. Why would this be a thing?
Well, this becomes out of a shortage of cows.
Mm.
And again, we go back to controlling, and the beef was readily available for the tourist industry, and it was available in certain limitations to the elderly, because after a certain age, I believe your rations include a certain amount of beef or bones, like I guess to do soups and stuff that would be more nutritious for people who are elderly with certain conditions that would need more iron, stuff like that. So because your rations are determined based on age and need. So
Wow.
yeah, so beef was illegal, and it's still very limited, because even though it's now quote unquote legal, there's still a lot of restrictions. Like you can kill a cow, but you have to have at least 7 cows, and then you can kill one. But which Cuban has 7 cows at this point? Like, so it's still very, very, very strict. So it's hard to believe that Cubans go through all of this, but yes, it's unbelievable.
I'm sure that there's probably a vegan listening somewhere. If I haven't scared all the vegans away already on the show, because I have done a show where we talk about how beef is actually like pretty good for the planet and for people, which a lot of people were mad about. But let's go back to that for a second. So North America was full of buffalo. So buffalo are like natural to the Great Plains of North America,
Right.
right? In Canada and the US. There were more buffalo like poundage back then than there are cows now, which means that we could actually increase the amount of cows that we have in North America and it would still be at a natural level for how much methane they produce with their farts, because everybody's like, oh, cows produce
Right.
too much methane, but it's part of the natural cycle. So
Mhm.
you don't need to get rid of that, right? It's a natural, normal thing from a normal animal. They're also really
Right.
good for the soil. Their poop is like an excellent, excellent fertilizer, and it keeps the prairie grasses growing, and you can use it for growing food and all these things. So it's actually like a pretty
Absolutely.
decent thing for the environment. But then the health is actually really good as well because people need this protein source. It's got all these vitamins in it and different things, right, that are good for our health. And so the whole vegan movement is like, I get it and I respect it that you don't want to hurt animals. But for a lot of people, it's a vital, vital lifeline to have these, nutritionally dense calories.
Right.
So I think it's a good thing to look at Cuba and see how much is regulated because I can see this movement starting in America where people are really demonizing cattle ranchers and cattle farmers. And I think that could be very dangerous for, the health of people. And I don't really like that that environmentalists are pushing for the government to regulate it or to reduce animal production. Now, there are factories that are really evil, I think, that really do bad like mistreatment of the animals. And so I think that's where we should work on making things better for animals. But if cows are outside roaming their best lives and stuff, I think that's a different story. So very interesting to hear how much beef is regulated and that it's difficult to have access and that it's coming back. Because when you say you can have 7 cows and then you can kill one. But if you're saying you can't own land, then whose land do you go and raise these cattle on? And how do you protect them from other people not stealing your cattle and saying that they're theirs? Because I'm sure Cubans aren't allowed to have guns, right?
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah, so how would you even, like, build your cattle herd and then start that? I don't know. It's just a little bit
Well,
scary, isn't it?
yeah, it's the thing in Cuba is that some people they live in certain, areas where there is cattle, but it's few and far between and it's very monitored. And they are required to give the state the meat, and you are required to deal with the state with your cattle or your cow's milk or anything like that. Any animal that you have to register it with the state. So I do know of people that live here now, but they used to live in remote areas where they used to, like, if a cow had a calf, they wouldn't register it. They would hide the cow that was pregnant, and they would not register the calf because the inspectors would take so long to get to those areas because they're not, easily accessible because they're in mountains, or they would hide their cows and their calf. When you get caught, the consequences are very grave. But the people that actually have cattle or cows, very few people, and they're heavily monitored.
Wow. It's sad and frightening, I think, to demonize and make a criminal out of people who are trying to feed themselves in this way that works. Like, animal husbandry has been going on for what, 10,000 years, or whatever. It's been going on forever. And people, like, I grew up in an area where people raise animals and they treat them so well. Like the guests we had on
Yes.
talking about cattle, they have like a masseuse that comes for their cows. Like,
Right. It's a job they take actual pride in.
yeah. Most people do. I'm sure there are people who do abuse animals, and like I say, that
Yeah.
is absolutely wrong. But I think for the most part, my experience, people treat their animals really well and spend a lot of money here in Canada on taking care of them. So, is there a problem with like bushmeat like Africa has, where people are going and killing wild animals to eat?
There's not much of that going on in Cuba, to be honest.
Yeah,
There
that's good,
isn't.
I guess.
People that were in the special period, which was back in the 90s, people used to kill everything from horses to cats to dogs. There was not a cat to be found in Havana because people were eating it because everybody was, hungry. So they resorted to eating all sorts of everything. But wild animals, like wild boars, it happens, but it's not something that you hear about too often.
Yeah, I worry about that for Canada because we have so much wildlife here, and if
Yeah,
food has just skyrocketed with everything that's going on, and so I just worry about families who
being limited.
yeah, who just, it's free to go and shoot like a turkey, but it's gonna
Right.
cost you like $40 to buy one. So I just kinda worry about that a little bit as things get tighter here where we are in North America and, food gets more expensive and stuff. So Cuba had like beef rations, they had milk rationed. I watched a video by you that said 5 eggs per month. That's insane because I eat 2 eggs a day for my own
Me
chickens.
too.
So,
Me too.
oh, do you? I
Yeah,
like eggs. They're very healthy.
me
Um,
too.
but yeah, 5 eggs per month. Like, is that per person?
That's 5x per month per person. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's so like it just boggles my mind. Like, because chickens are so easy to take care of
Oh my
and they
gosh,
produce
yes.
eggs every day, but you got to feed them, right?
Right.
How are you gonna do that if you can't? But anyway, so yeah, there's so many rations on different things, but were the elites always eating well? Because I know tourists always had food available, over the last few decades. So is there like an elitist kind of government class that always had access to things, or were they all regulated the same?
Oh no, yeah, the elite has everything. They have access to excellent healthcare. They have separate facilities for diplomats, and they have exclusive neighborhoods that used to be like the high class neighborhoods in the old times before communism. They took over all of that. So those homes of the millionaires that were in Cuba, they took over all those properties because they got to travel. They got the opportunity to purchase things abroad and have things that other people didn't have in Cuba.
Yeah, see, the promise of communism is that everyone's equal, but it's not true because the people who are telling you that you're going to be equal, they're controlling you. So basically, what's going to happen is, yeah, they're going to take all the rich and poor people that you know and kind of make them into this class of whatever you want to call it, serfs, proletariat, peasants, whatever you want to say. And then they're going to be their own elitist class because they're the ones making the rules. They're the ones sending the money everywhere. They're the ones saying who gets beef and who doesn't. And of course, they're going to have access to that beef, right? And we did see this in Canada actually a little bit in terms of travel with politicians. So in the very beginning of COVID, everybody was not allowed to travel, or they were recommended that they don't travel. But then all our politicians were flying around on all these private planes, like going wherever they wanted. Like we don't have
Right.
access to those types of planes. This whole promise of like everything's going to be better, I don't believe it personally. And I think that Cuba is a bit of a good example. I don't want to say good example because it's very sad, I think, what happens to people there, and a bit of a sad picture to see what can happen when you give the government so much power.
Yes. No, absolutely. And I do hope Cuba serves as an example. It isn't the best example of a functioning society, but I do hope it serves as an example of what not to do and what path
Yeah.
not to go down on. You know, a lot of people looking from the outside in, they believe Cuba is a tropical paradise. They believe that the healthcare is great. And this is all the government has been pushing so much propaganda for 62 years, you know, so they've been very efficient. Now that the social media has been infiltrated basically in Cuba, they are battling, and that's why they've struggled to keep the image alive, the image they were given the world. And so I am really glad it's happening because Cuba should never be the example to follow. And under any circumstance, for anything in a society, it should never be an example to follow.
Yeah. I never understood why Che Guevara t-shirts were so popular in university.
Che is a trigger word for me. And I think for every Cuban that's not a communist. He was a
Yeah.
cold-blooded assassin, and
I think he was racist
he
too, wasn't he? He did some pretty
absolutely
racist things.
he was utilized by Fidel Castro to gain momentum and to get rid of a whole lot of people. Unfortunately, he's become some sort of a fashion icon, and
Yeah.
people, you know, wear him on t-shirts and belts, and you ask a lot of those people, "Hey, do you know who that is?" And they have no idea.
Yeah, I think he's a handsome face, right? And so people are just
Right.
fooled by like this artsy kind of version of his handsome face on a t-shirt and it looks great. But then yeah, when you ask them, they're like, something about a motorcycle. He's a cool motorcycle guy. It's like, well, there's yes, but there are
No.
a lot of things. But yeah, it's crazy. Everything is going crazy now these days, it seems. But the last question I did want to ask you, just one more thing, in relation to the environment and Cuba, and how these governments can cause problems for the environment. Can you tell us about how households typically get water?
It depends on where you live. If you live in the country, it comes through a pipe and you have to have containers out to collect water. It could come around every other day. It used to be. Now it's about every 2 weeks from what I hear from my family. In Havana or in other cities, it comes through your main water line. Like you don't really have a schedule. It just sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. So what happens is it fills up your cistern or whatever system you have. Like some people have 55-gallon tanks, and it fills that up. So you kind of have to work with that until the next time you get water. So let's say you're in Havana and your water came, you better fill up everything you have because you don't know the next time you're going to get water. So while your tank is getting filled and your cistern is getting filled, it would be a great idea to just fill up your buckets. And that's what people do, just so they have water to do the basic things, brushing teeth, etc. You don't flush toilets for number one, only number two. If you live in a building, usually the pressure is not strong enough to get to the top floors. So you have to go down, up and down the stairs. Regular buildings where normal people live don't have elevators, and they go up to 12 stories. So if you live in story, floor number 11, You have to go up and down the stairs and carry your water up to your apartment.
Well, yeah, that's tough. That's, but how would we get to a point where Cuba has all clean water? Because even Peru was like this, like you weren't supposed to drink the water coming out of the taps. And
Oh no, you have to boil it. Oh yeah, you have to boil it.
so none of this is clean, like drinking water. It's just
Oh
regular.
no, not at no, no, no. All
Oh,
the water in Cuba is boiled. Ever since was born.
yeah. Unless you're getting it in like water bottles, and then where does
Right.
all that?
And good luck with finding water bottles. And if you're like a Cuban regular, water bottles are a luxury.
But if you're just gonna try and change the political system to socialist or communist, then you're gonna basically have a class of the ruling elites who
Yep.
live in palaces and mansions and can eat whatever they want, like Bill Gates on his private jet eating his hamburgers and then, telling other people they shouldn't. So
Right.
there's,
Right.
this stuff is going to come with a big political change. So I think we have to be very careful if you are
Yep.
listening and you're thinking that, maybe this would be better for the people. I don't think it will be in the end, and I don't think it will be for the environment. I think it could end up a lot worse because you don't have that competition of, the garbage disposal trucks. Maybe there's a few companies and they're
Hmm.
bidding to get a contract to do the garbage removal for a city, and that's going to be worth millions of dollars. So of course it's a benefit to them. But if they're not going to get paid, any more than anyone else, why would they bother to do all that work and get all that equipment and work those long hours? Like there's got to be incentive, right, to keep
Right.
everything going. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Daylin, about the environment and about all of this stuff?
Just that this is leaning towards the far left because they are pushing the whole environment thing. And just keep in mind that when politicians push a subject, it doesn't mean that they really care all that much about that subject. They just want the people who care about that subject to jump on board so they could push all of their agenda. And I think we have learned never to trust a politician when they say they're going to do something, to follow through with it, regardless of who it is, left or right. So I think that as people, we should care about the environment because it is where we live, and we should have respect and be teaching that to our children to respect the environment. And I think we have way more power as people if we don't give it to the government, because if we keep that power, we're able to develop organizations that push for change and actually can push the government and put pressure to get things done. If we give the government that power, who's going to pressure them when they don't get things done? We lose that power and we have everything to lose because it's in their
Yeah.
hands then. So I think if we really do want to do something about the environment, we have to keep the power with the people and continue to educate everyone on the importance of preserving the environment.
Yeah, that's so well said, because imagine if you can't protest anymore. How are you going
Right.
to, go and help your cause if the government is going to put you in jail if you do it, right? Like
Exactly.
that's pretty crazy. And we have those benefits now in a lot of these countries that we live in, where yeah, you can hold these big environmental rallies and put pressure on the government. But as you see in Cuba, they have no power to come together as a group and say, hey, we want clean drinking water, and kind of demand it from the government. But in Canada, we have this still. I don't know for how
Yeah,
long we're going to have it, but you don't want to lose those things because they're very important in so many aspects of our life. So yeah, that was well said.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this has been a good conversation, and it's been a pleasure having you on, Daylin. So thank you very much.
Oh, no, Laura, thank you so much. It's been a complete pleasure.
Oh, and also, where can people find you if they want to check out some of your videos? You're on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram.
Yes, it's under Spanglish Generation, all three platforms.
Spanglish generation. But yeah, so thanks, Daylin. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That was Daylin Horruitiner. She's a Cuban American, and she was on the show today talking about the trouble with communism and that it might not solve all our environmental issues. And you can find her online, Spanglish Generation. She makes a lot of videos talking about her experience.
Change starts now.
This is the Zero Waste Countdown Podcast.